President Biden stepping up pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin, meeting in San Francisco today with the wife and daughter of late Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. President Biden offering his condolences to the family less than a week after Navalny died in a Russian prison. Welcome, everyone, to The Four this afternoon. I'm Heather Holmes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Frank Mallico. Today's meeting comes as the Biden administration is preparing to announce a new package of sanctions against Russia and Putin himself.
Yeah, we want to talk more about this with Stephen Zunas, professor of politics and international studies at the University of San Francisco. Professor, thanks again for taking the time. President Biden today calling Navalny a man of incredible courage. Explain the significance of him meeting with the family today.
I think the president is really wanting to show solidarity with not just Navalny's family, but the people of Russia who are up against a terribly oppressive regime and where basic liberties are being taken away with increasing regularity, and where dissidents have been murdered. And the fact that Putin, felt he could get away with sending the most prominent critic to a remote Arctic prison, where if he was not killed outright, certainly the conditions, contributed to his death, shows that he's pretty ruthless, and that he really thinks he can get away with whatever he wants to. So this showing of both sympathy, to the family on a personal level, but also a signal that the United States and then much of the rest of the world finds this kind of behavior unacceptable.
Yeah.
Professor, I'm curious how the Russian people really feel about Navalny, the man, and his mysterious death. Will we ever know? And how will his death silence his Russian followers? Or will that make them even more vocal, if that's possible?
Well, most Russians are not going to get much news or information about the circumstances of his death. Indeed, the Russians seem to be hiding it even from his own family. And obviously, there's a tendency in authoritarian situations to claim that opponents, even someone with strong nationalist credentials like Navalny, is somehow a traitor to the state. But the fact is that Putin has been bringing the country to ruin. The economy is terrible as a result of the international sanctions, because of his aggression against Ukraine. Corruption is rampant, and the lack of political freedom in and of itself is something that is certainly leading to a reaction. But it's always hard to judge, when you have repression coming down, whether it will beat people into submission or or have a backfire effect, so that people end up being more likely to challenge the regime.
Okay, Professor, as we mentioned, tomorrow President Biden expected to announce a new round of sanctions on Russia, in part for Navalny's death. I mean, the question is, will they have any sort of impact?
It's unlikely. I mean, actually, there are some indications that these sanctions were planned to be announced before Navalny's death, on the second anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The problem is that the United States has already imposed about strict sanctions as it can. The amount of influence the United States can have on a country like Russia is pretty minimal. It's not like a U.S. ally where we could, threaten to withhold foreign aid or arms sales, or countries who have close trade relationships where economic sanctions might bite a little harder. But still, the symbolic importance is real. And it would be hard for the Biden administration not to do at least something in reaction to Navalny's death.
And Professor, the president's leaving this afternoon. In fact, he may have already taken off. At a fundraiser last night, President Biden called Putin a crazy SO blank. The Kremlin dismissed the comment as Hollywood cowboy-style behavior. I'm curious what your reaction is to the comment and the current relationship between our two countries.
Well, it's hard to think of it as being much worse. And it's so sad because those of us who remember the end of the Cold War, the fall of communism, the breakup of the Soviet Union, many of us are really hopeful that this kind of rivalry between Washington and Moscow was a thing of the past. And in many ways, it's worse than ever. And so it is I mean, strong language is appropriate, I think, when we're dealing with somebody like Putin. When the more conventional channels of diplomacy and polite language don't seem to work. But we are entering a very dangerous phase because we are dealing with a very dangerous man in the form of Vladimir Putin.
All right, Professor Zunis, always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.